I'm going to start off by saying just a few words about us. We're an organisation focused on learning, well, extraordinary learning, and that's with and about technology, and that includes computing, but also covers all aspects of learning with digital. We've been interested in digital media literacy for quite some time and developing students' critical skills and awareness and helping teachers with that too. And like all our speakers today, we're drawing on our own direct work with children and young people too. So I'm going to glance back a couple of years and then very briefly sketch some of the current wider context, mention a few specifics relevant to the UK, and also talk about curriculum too. So Caitlin, here's a shot of our trailer for the talk we did 3 years ago to about 800 people in the arena at the BET show, the Educational Technology Show in January 2019. At that point, we were inspired by the fake news pupil workshops that we were running, where we did hands-on with students using programming tools, as well as evaluating some classic spoof websites. And I think that blurb there still captures well what we're trying to do. I'm not going to read it all out to you. I know we've dropped the use of the term fake news these days, as that has a lot of extra associations, and the more in-depth move to using the term news literacy that you'll hear more about shortly. And at that time, academics like Shoshana Zuboff were in the international spotlight, and we were aware of the All-Party Parliamentary Literacy Group Commission and report. And of course, that was all pre-pandemic. So moving to the present, I'm going to mention four recent developments that I think are wider in the relevant in the wider context. First of all, UK government, the DCMS department published its strategy in the summer, and the scope of this is wider than just education in school. It's really society at large, I think. And we're delighted that, like our partners here, to have had some of our work highlighted on the accompanying website. And Faye wrote a really helpful blog at the time, which we've got a link to there. Secondly, the UK government online harms bill is currently before Parliament. And in the words of one minister, the aim of that is to make the UK the safest place in the world to be online. But it's not without controversy, and it's very long in the making. So we have to see where that goes, and there's a lot of good BBC reporting on that as well. Added in to this, the Information Commissioner's Office has introduced the age-appropriate design code for any online services that are used by children, but many people have already pointed out that there are breaches by players large and small. And then fourthly, in a more global context, good news is that the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, of course, developed many years ago, has at last been updated with an announcement and celebration this year. And this poster from Five Rights puts it very neatly. The UN Committee on the Rights of the Child has just said, your rights apply in the digital world. And I've enlarged the key statement that's relevant for us in this session. So turning now to a school focus and the curriculum, the picture's quite complex, and that's partly due to terminology and subject compartmentalization, but also due to the fact that digital's constantly developing and changing. And we've also had an unprecedented turn to online and blended teaching and learning in the last 18 months as well. So in this somewhat packed slide, I've stacked up curriculum subjects and aspects on the left as applicable to England. And of course, schools do organise curriculum and departments in different ways, so you may not find a complete match of acronyms. And again, relevant in a UK context, at the bottom I've highlighted keeping children safe in education as safeguarding and all educators' duty of care is relevant here in the widest sense, as well as the detailed expectations set out for schools in that regulation. And perhaps it's worth saying that in essence, this whole area is about truth too. So perhaps spiritual, moral, social and cultural development could have gone on this slide, and religious education too could have been put on. So on the right-hand side, we've got literacy at the centre, and reading, understanding, and potentially writing, as well as speaking and listening are absolutely at the heart of this. And there are many other overlapping literacies, of which I've just added a few here. So we've got news literacy, digital literacy, etc. When the computing curriculum was introduced in 2014, a guide at the time spoke of pupils having an opportunity to develop a more critical media literacy as they work with tools that until relatively recently were the domain of professionals, and 7 years on from that, apps and software have even more power to represent or distort reality. And we have a tide of dis and misinformation and confusion of fact with opinion at large as well. So computing in the national curriculum as a subject mentions responsible, competent, confident, and creative users of technology. And at Key Stage 2, we have specific mentions of pupils being discerning in evaluating digital content, as well as using technology safely, respectfully, and responsibly, and reporting concerns about content or contact in a range of ways. I want to move on now to our own specific CLC project that's been running for 3 years, and which last year reached about 500 Year 5 pupils, and how it originated. Going back a few years now, the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Literacy launched the Commission on Fake News and the Teaching of Critical Literacy in schools, with a focus on digital news environments. And out of this came Newswise, with funding from Google, and partners here this evening were closely involved. And then a wider collaboration in the form of a network, which we're delighted to be part of, the News Literacy Network. Our current collaboration with First News Education is based on an academic model. And so these are the aims of our current news project from a news literacy perspective. And here's a shot of the some of the academic model behind it. And whilst we're still in 2021, it's worth reminding ourselves that this year's Safer Internet Day was around reliability. So lots of useful materials still available for schools there. And finally, a helpful framework to pull some threads together, if you haven't come across it, is the UK Council for Internet Safety's Education Framework for a Connected World, which was updated last year and will hopefully continue to be kept up to date. And there are lots of I can statements across all phases. These green ones are the 7 to 11 years ones, and include such terms as misinformation and disinformation, something that we picked up in our original workshop with schools.
I'm an assistant editor for BBC News, and I'm the editorial lead for BBC Young Reporter, and have helped and developed the project's news literacy work, particularly over the last sort of 3 or 4 years now. Time flies in a pandemic. So yeah, this is me on social media in 140 characters or whatever it is, a bit of a sense of who I am. I'm a member of the Ofcom Making Sense of Media Advisory Board. I've worked for the BBC for very nearly 20 years. Didn't know journalism was going to be what I was doing, so it gives you a bit of context for who I am and what I do. Obviously, I'm going to be talking specifically about some of the BBC's activities to do with media literacy more generally, but particularly news literacy, from online safety materials that BBC own it, sort of oversee and provide, to the work that Young Reporter's been doing in this space. And so this is Young Reporter. This is my day job. It's a project that works with 11 to 18-year-olds across the UK, helping them develop their own media skills, news literacy, and my specific role with an editorial hat on is helping them share their stories with wider BBC audiences. Formerly known as School Report, the project's now in its 16th year and has evolved somewhat since that time. You know, that was kind of YouTube was still a new thing, and social media and smartphones really weren't kind of everyday objects in quite the way they are now. So things have absolutely evolved in the media landscape, but also obviously in education. But we continue to base the project on the same values, which is helping to empower and inform young people to create content and to understand the media landscape that's relevant to them, but also in their future. Young Reporter offers young people the opportunity to tell their own original story ideas with the BBC, but also much of our work is providing outreach and workshop opportunities for schools, colleges and youth groups in the areas of news literacy, a wide range of media production skills and storytelling, as well as kind of career opportunities and Q&As relating to future broadcasting careers. So really trying to kind of be transparent about what it is that we do in broadcasting. It's a partnership project run across the BBC. So I sit, as I said, within BBC News, but my colleagues are based in the BBC Education, that's Teach and Bite Size in terms of the brands, and also the BBC Academy, which is the kind of HR and early careers department within the BBC. Any school, college or youth group working with 11 to 18-year-olds in the UK can get involved. You'll find more details on our website. Why are we, as the BBC, why are we in this space? Just to contextualise, it's actually part of the organisation's public purpose responsibilities, the fulfilment of which is part of the Royal Charter and the basis of the BBC values. So these are some of those values you can see on that slide. The first public purpose, as you can see, is to provide impartial news and information to help people understand and engage the world around them. We have a kind of duty to provide accurate and impartial news and current affairs and factual programming. And in doing so, we obviously have a responsibility to ensure that we can support young people and all of our audiences to access that and understand the editorial remit that we are coming to them with. And we do that across the BBC in a number of different ways, but certainly in terms of young people, that's through CBBC, children's programming, BBC Bite Size, Young Reporter, and the Beyond Fake News work and resources that are online. More recently, we started some very specific news literacy work in this disinformation, misinformation space, exploring some of that transparency and demystifying the sources and reporting process, which the project had always done, but increasingly we were hearing from teachers and young people that more of a context of that would be really valuable. So we launched the Real News resources and workshop activities in 2018, and we've increasingly been delivering those, albeit in a virtual space at the moment. And we asked young people, is it real? And hopefully provide some simple tips about how to spot misleading and false information, particularly that they see online. So with that in mind, I thought I'd give you a quick taster of one of our video resources that is available online, but also that we use in those workshops.
Fake news.
We think it's a problem.
I think fake news is a problem because it can influence how people make decisions.
It leaves me feeling like I don't know who to believe.
And it worries me that people are growing up misinformed.
And if we're misinformed, how can we understand the world around us?
I think it's a problem because it leads to confusion.
And we begin to mistrust all news sources.
But what exactly is it?
And how do we spot it?
Fake news is lies and propaganda told for a political or commercial purpose which deploys digital technology, social media, new networks to go viral, to reach around the world and influence millions of people very, very quickly.
So what about news that's just wrong, like when someone's just made a mistake? Mistakes can be made. Journalists sometimes make mistakes too. Or sometimes you might be reading a story and the headline could be misleading. Or a photo in that story could have been changed in some way. It might even have been changed to make you laugh, to make you want to share it. These stories we wouldn't necessarily call fake news, but they are misleading in some ways.
So if fake or false stories tell us something is real when it's actually not,
what about when someone tells us something is fake or false when it's actually real and true?
If you're a politician who wants to close down debate, then you might use the phrase fake news because you don't want people to ask you questions about something uncomfortable. And that's a legitimate area for democratic inquiry, so it's really important that we're clear about what fake news does and doesn't mean.
You're feeling confused, I'm feeling confused, right? There's all these words, fake news, hoaxes, spin, but in the end, just be aware that not everything you see online is completely true.
It might be helpful to think of it not just in black and white terms, but that there's lots of different ways that a story might be misleading or inaccurate, it might be spin, and in all of these situations, it's helpful to step back and just ask yourself, is this likely to be true? Does this feel right? Before you go on and share it on social media and pass that story along.
So that's an example of one of our video resources that we have produced as part of this kind of Real News project and programme of activities and resources. We have tried to utilise BBC staff that are in those jobs in the newsroom and do some of that unpacking of some of the key terms associated with critical thinking and news literacy. So this is just an example slide of some of what we talk about, and that kind of very loaded term fake news is something that we try and shift away from, as you probably gathered from that video, and thinking about what is real and thinking about how can we navigate news rather than just get caught up in what's fake about it. And we also talk about not just the what, but the who. So we like to explore some of the key players, about those that are sharing the different types of false or misleading information, and explore a bit about why they're doing it. This is a simple kind of visual overview that comes from the BBC's disinformation team, and it was part of an original online news feature produced by Mariana Spring, the BBC's disinformation reporter. She identified 7 types of people who start and spread viral misinformation: the joker, the politician, the conspiracy theorist, the insider, the scammer, and also, of course, our friends and families and celebrities. And when talking to young people, we try and look at different examples of these and explore some of the motivations behind them. And at the moment, and we constantly evolve this workshop when we're delivering it, we're looking at through specifically the lens of climate change related stories and coronavirus. When we first began the project, it probably had a bit more of a political focus, but we will try and shift that kind of the lens that we deliver the workshop to a relevant theme or subject area for the young people that we're delivering it to. Back to the real. In these sessions, we also obviously want to support young people with things that they can do in their own kind of navigating of news and information online. And so we ask, is it real? And this is a bit of a checklist that we encourage them to think about perhaps employing. And I'm sure you're aware there's loads of news literacy and media literacy checklists out there. In my experience, they all serve at the same purpose, just to remind us of some of the basic principles of critical thinking. There's no kind of right or wrong one that you use, but hopefully 1 or 2 of these points will stick in young people's heads, and they will utilise them when they're on their smartphone or in their future academic careers too. And yeah, what is it all really fundamentally about, and why do we do it? Well, trust and impartiality are the 2 core BBC News values, which as journalists we try and live and breathe, and they're what audiences tell us most matters too. The first of the BBC values is trust being the foundation of the BBC. We're independent, we're impartial, and we're honest. But it's a challenging time for public service broadcasting and news reporting in particular. And unsurprisingly, in the period of the previous US president and with the pandemic, my BBC News colleagues have been increasingly dealing with all aspects of fact-checking and debunking of stories in social media particularly, as well as responding to the challenge of upholding trust in our journalism and news reporting. And it's therefore no surprise that a couple of years ago, the former Director General of the BBC, Tony Hall, convened the Trusted News Initiative, which was about media organisations and pan-industry broadcasters coming together to collectively work in evolving and empowering and amplifying trusted news and reporting. And partners in that were global or are global, including AP, the Financial Times, First Draft, Reuters, Microsoft, The Hindu, Washington Post, etc. And it's just a reminder about the challenge of news literacy and disinformation being global. It isn't just about us in the UK, obviously. And when Tim Davie became the BBC's 17th Director General last year, he put impartiality as our top priority for any of us working in the organisation, not just in news. And so it's no surprise that last year, my colleagues from the BBC Reality Check team, BBC Monitoring, as well as other teams within BBC News, formed the Disinformation Unit, which now more formally collates and collaborates to deal with both our on-air editorial reporting of disinformation, misinformation, and stories related to it, but also through research and collaborating and sharing insights and skills within the organisation, but also externally. What impartiality means in reality is obviously really about a blurring of opinion and fact in reporting. And I think that's one of the challenges that we find young people struggle with when we're talking about news and reporting information that they might be seeing, particularly online. And so that's an area that we particularly increasingly have started exploring in the Young Reporter Real News activities and workshops. And this video is another example of a resource that explores that particularly.
My name is Rachel and I'm a journalist for BBC Reality Check, the fact-checking team. And I start most of my days checking the news on my way into work. One story today has particularly caught my eye. It's a report from the BBC and it says Melton in Leicestershire has come bottom of a list of places to live if you're under 26. Now, is that a fact? As a journalist at BBC Reality Check, I couldn't let that claim slip by without taking a closer look. Let's see.
Hey, yeah, that's a good question, but what makes something a fact?
Robert is the BBC's head of statistics. Go on.
Well, for us, a fact is a claim about the world based on data. It's verifiable, it's something you can check.
In this case, it came from a BBC survey of 378 local authorities in England, Wales and Scotland to try and find the most desirable place to live. They looked at lots of things, including access to healthcare services, sport, leisure, shopping. And once they looked at all of those things, they concluded that Melton in Leicestershire was at the bottom of the list.
Well, it's a fact to say that Melton came bottom of a list ranked by these variables. But you'd steer clear of saying best or worst, because that's a conclusion and it's based on judgment. Now, experts can help guide us through a complex set of facts and figures, but it does take judgment to do that, and that's where opinion can creep in.
Okay.
Well, let's take this pretend jar of water I have. Say I fill it up to the 50% mark. That's a fact. But is it half full or half empty?
Yeah, okay. But why is the difference between a fact and opinion so important? Maybe one of my colleagues will have a good answer for us. Soda?
Hi. Well, we come across this quite a lot when we're looking at disinformation, opinion dressed up as facts. And the problem is that sometimes this can leave the impression that something is a fact when it's actually an opinion. Good journalism will be clear about that difference. By the way, I've never been there before. What do the people of Melton think about this?
Thanks, Soda. You're right. What do the people of Melton think about where they live? I bet Imran, who works on the story for Newsbeat, knows.
Hey, yeah, well, we wanted to get the reaction of the people who actually lived in Melton to coming bottom of our rankings. So we actually went there and found out to get people's opinions.
So what did they say?
Well, we spoke to one woman who actually really liked living there. She said there's lots of nice green spaces, it's a really pretty town. She said maybe a few more things for her child to do would be good, a few more cocktail bars for her. But in general, she really liked it, liked the number of cafes and coffee shops where she could just hang out.
She seems to quite like living in Melton.
You're right, she does, and that's the thing. It may have come bottom of our rankings, but her opinion matters, and opinions can offer some real insight into a story.
Exactly. Opinion and fact can both help us to understand a story. We just have to be able to tell which one is which. Facts are something that can be verified. We can prove whether they're true or not. Whereas when it comes to opinion, that's someone's point of view. It's based on their interpretation of the facts, based on their personal experience.
So encouraging young people to ask questions and consider their own decisions is also at the heart of the BBC iReporter game. This is an online interactive, create your own adventure game that the player puts themselves in the role of a journalist working on a breaking news stories. And do they veer towards speed over accuracy? It's your chance to give it a go. And although this fictional story related in this game is aimed at secondary age, particularly I guess Key Stage 3, we've had really positive feedback that actually at that top end of primary, it really works for too, albeit that the story that it's based around relates to social media and the use of it. I just kind of always put that in as a caveat. That's available online for people to use. And also in the last 2 years, my BBC Bite-sized colleagues have also considerably extended the range of online resources for 11 to 16-year-olds in particular with the Fact or Fake campaign. This is an array of online articles and videos that are on the Bite-sized website, ranging from quizzes and practical tips and videos. And there are also quite a lot of online materials that are available for parents too. And I thought I'd show you, I think on the next slide, an example of a social clip that was produced by the Bite-sized Fact or Fake team. And so I've spoken about secondary age focus particularly, because obviously that's my particular day job expertise. But the CBBC also has some media literacy space too. Firstly, of course, there's Newsround, which going into 2022 turns 50. That's where my journalism actually started, in fact. And that's a daily news programme and platform for children to learn about what's happening in the world and sharing news and current affairs stories that are relevant to them, both online and through their TV bulletins on the CBBC channel every day. And then in 2019, the BBC Own It launched, which aims to provide a helping hand to children aged 8 to 13 to have a happier, healthier and more positive life online. That project and this initiative was born out of the cyberbullying task force that Prince William then chaired. And as Own It tells children, it's here to help you be the boss of your online life. Whatever you need, help, advice, skills and inspiration. There's the Own It app, which has a unique keyboard which supports the well-being of young people when they're online and through their phone, as well as a plethora of resources on the website, which help young people track feelings, has quizzes, also lots of videos involving familiar faces to them to support their navigation of the online world in particular. And then lastly, Aging Up. I wanted to mention the BBC Beyond Fake News collection, which is resources from across the BBC, not just for young people, but Trusted News Initiative conference slides and recorded sessions, materials from Bite-sized and Young Reporter, obviously, but also My World, which is a global equivalent to Newsround and has lots of media literacy resources. And they're all available on the BBC website including some resources in languages like Hindi for people to access and utilise in any of your teaching. And that's it for me. Bit of a one-stop shop of information about what the BBC is doing in this space.
My name's Margaret. I am a former secondary school teacher, and for nearly 20 years I've been delivering media literacy programmes for The Guardian and the Guardian Foundation. Who are the Guardian Foundation? Well, we're an independent charity that aims to increase access to the media. We believe that a free press is crucial to a functioning democracy and that everybody should have their voice heard and engage in the media they consume. And in order for media to hold power account, it must be made up of representative journalists. So our vision is a world where all people can tell their stories, access truth, and hold power to account. So in terms of what we do, we're passionate about engaging young people with news, and we have 2 media literacy programmes. Behind the Headlines, which works with secondary and higher education groups, which I manage, which was set up in 2002. And our sister programme, Newswise, as mentioned before, was set up in 2018, which works with primary groups. So we believe that there's 4 key components to media literacy and news literacy. It's about giving young people context so they can develop an understanding about how news is chosen, researched, verified, reported, edited, and produced. The next stage is about developing critical analysis, identifying ways that a news or information source may be misleading, asking questions, researching, fact-checking, in order that young people have the confidence to decide whether a news source is credible and trustworthy. Key in all of this is authentic hands-on learning. By participating in our programmes, young people produce their own media using journalistic processes, which also makes it engaging, impactful, and interesting. And finally, it's about access. It's about working with underrepresented schools and communities to ensure that engaging with news isn't just something for the well-off or for those that can afford to pay. So 2021 has been a bit different for us. So in common with many institutions, we've had to adapt and innovate in order to keep on delivering our programmes to young people and teachers. So we expanded our resources to support teachers and students and parents with remote learning at the beginning of the pandemic. We've organised teacher webinars to support remote learning when schools were closed and when schools were open. When schools are open, we're delivering our virtual workshop programme to young people across the UK as part of a blended learning approach. And finally, we've also moved into sort of looking at career opportunities for young people. So in the last summer, we organised 4 journalism masterclasses for young people. We expanded our profile to actually develop an online media careers week. And provide advice about career paths in media too. So in terms of Behind the Headlines, we aim to open up the world of news for young people aged 11 to 25. Our programme is devised and taught by professionals who have had experience of working in education, but have also been immersed in the world of journalism. We consult widely with teachers when developing our programmes and resources to ensure that our work supports the curriculum, is unique, engaging, and impactful, and puts young people at the heart of what we do. So in terms of our media literacy workshops, as mentioned, we would normally for the last 18 years have been delivering these out of our education centre based in the Guardian offices. But as I say, we have pivoted to virtual delivery. We currently now run 4 virtual news workshops. The first of these is Fake or For Real. We run Make a Local Newspaper. We do feature writing for 6th formers. And for Key Stage 4 and 5, we also do a slightly longer workshop called The Future of News. As mentioned, all sessions are delivered as part of a blended learning approach, and they also can be adapted for remote learning when schools are actually closed. And we try and make sure that the students actually and the teachers have resources both post and before the session so they can incorporate it into sort of a wider scheme of lessons if they wish to. So not only do we have specific workshop resources, we also provide a whole range of free media news resources on our website to support news and media literacy, and obviously working in the secondary space, that is across the curriculum. Teacher training is quite important to us as well, because we realise that teachers play such a crucial role in actually delivering media literacy. So we run a whole range of teaching webinars. So our next one is coincidentally called Teaching News, which is on the 23rd of November. We do half and full day subjects, conferences supporting subject specialists. We do initial teacher training because we realise that media literacy training is important for teachers when they start their careers. And we're often asked to run bespoke training sessions for both national and international news organisations. So finally, the final sort of aspect, the fourth aspect of what we do is, and it's crucial for us in terms of how the Guardian, our mission is to actually open up and demystify the world of media to ensure that the media represents the industry and society that it serves. So we've done a lot of recent work, as mentioned, showcasing to young people career roles, career paths and resources to get them started. And most recently, we did a whole range of careers of women in STEM careers as part of Ada Lovelace Day. So what I thought I'd do is I thought I'd show you some resources and ideas from our Fake or For Real session that we ran, that's 40 minutes, a virtual session. So in this session, we do a number of different things. We get young people to discuss about how they find out about news, how they consume it. We get them to analyse the different ways that stories may be misleading. We get them to focus on questioning and research skills. And then finally, once we've gone, they put these skills into practice by creating their own Fake or For Real presentations using recent stories that we supply. And the Fake or For Real takes inspiration from the Guardian Instagram series, which is on Instagram stories every 2 weeks. More about that. But all our sessions are delivered in the context of how a news organisation works. So it puts that learning into sort of actuality as well. We talk to young people about where they find out about news, which is quite interesting in itself. And we get lots of responses back. So we get a whole range from things from like TV, radio, newspapers, friends and family, and then a whole range of apps, some of which we've heard of, some of which we haven't. But what's quite interesting with that is we sort of do some work with them and sort of say, well, actually, comparison to things like what's come through in Ofcom, we compare that with TV, friends and family, which is the top 2, and then apps and social media, which is number 4 at the moment, and friends and family. But following on from that, then we start to talk to them about, well, which of those do you trust to be the most important? So we do get some discussions which will cheer Josie's heart about the BBC, and about, you know, a trusted news source and the Guardian, if they've heard of us. But it's quite interesting in terms of getting your people to sort of rank them and think about, and they also start talking about the length of the news that they engage with, if it's only like a couple of sentences, or whether they actually sit and listen to a radio report for a minute, or a news report, or watch a news report for 2 minutes. But again, it gets them thinking about the sort of dissemination of news and how they get news and what they actually respond to it as well. So we've talked a lot about frameworks. We have a framework too. So moving on, once we've done that, we start to talk about then, well, you've started to ask questions. What question would you actually ask? So we've developed our own sort of, and taken sort of from lots of other inspiration as well. We use the 5 Ws because that's what journalists do, and that's the questions they normally ask. And built around that, we sort of unpack those 5 questions and get them to think about questions they would ask when actually researching sources. The second thing we talk about is the actual research itself. So we actually talk about lateral or horizontal research. And we talk about how you actually read online and how you need to step away from that sort of I read one book approach, which is I read the whole of the web page all the way down to the bottom, to actually open multiple tabs as you go along and actually start to work out the provenance of that story and start to see how much coverage it's actually got and read across the websites. We actually show them a Fake or For Real. Now, this is an old one. So this is Leia who presents it. And she and her team picks 3 stories from the news, and you have to vote on it. And then after each one, she actually gives a detailed explanation as to what it actually is.
Rat poison, pizza, and upside down planes. Can you spot this week's fake news? This video shows a plane being twisted around in a typhoon. Fake or for real? It's fake. The video got 12 million views on Facebook as Typhoon Margaret spread across southern China. But this part of the video is computer-generated footage. This part is genuine, but it's from an unrelated incident.
So that's a little sort of sample of our Fake or For Real. I just want to quickly run through our other 3. So we do make a local news front page. We discuss with students again about news, but we also get them to analyse and research their own local news. And in the context of our interaction with them in that 40-minute virtual session, we talk about news writing and structure, we talk about sub-editing, and we talk about picture choices, headline writing and production. And then afterwards, our intervention, they go on and actually create their own local news front page. And we used to have a very sophisticated software in the education centre where you could make it in real time, but we've adapted those to exist in Microsoft PowerPoint, and you can share them in Google Classroom. So we're providing them with the tools to actually do that across a number of lessons. And again, taught through the prism of how a news organisation actually works. For sixth form groups, we do feature writing and news features. And again, it's looking at how the structure of a feature article is different from a news article, but it's still related to news. This one we run twice. We set them up to write a draft feature. And then because we're lovely, we come back in the second session and actually give them feedback on their feature and set them up when actually creating that further and developing that further across their learning. And our latest one is called The Future of News. It's actually 80 minutes. It's different for us in the sense it's not just us, we're actually working with members from our user experience and digital teams. And it's discussing where news is, where news was, and where news might be in the future, and actually getting young people to work on a collaborative task that they then have to present back to us and our colleagues from user experience and digital. Just to give you some numbers, we've worked with over 2,000 young people through our virtual programme last year, over 300 teachers. We're currently over more than 146,000. We're desperate to get to 150,000 by the time we're at 20 next year. Students and teachers really value what we do. 50% of students say it's increased their interest in news. 88% says it's given them the research and questioning skills they need to check whether a story is trustworthy. And obviously teachers really rate our work in terms of the workshops that we do and the skills that we actually give young people. And then finally, for us in terms, we get lots, teachers really enjoy it and students really enjoy it. They like the fact that it's interactive, we're not talking to them, they're actually responding to us, we give them practical things to do. And a number of other things, it's given us a chance to actually work with a whole range of schools that we wouldn't necessarily be able to come to us in London. Schools do travel quite a way, but I was working with a school in Northern Ireland yesterday, we were working with a school in Scotland the week before. So again, it's sort of expanded our reach in a different way. So even when we go back to on-site delivery, we will still carry on doing virtual. So that's a positive thing to take from the last 15 months or so. Newswise, Faye may also talk about Newswise, so I'm not going to talk hugely about it, but it's our brilliant sister organisation. It is a partnership between us, the NLT and PSHE. It's about teaching critical literacy in context. They have a 12 lesson unit of work, 60 plus amazing resources and opportunities to interact with journalists, as well as teacher training and family learning. And it's all about creating an immersive experience for young people. So if you take part in Newswise, you actually set up your own journalism training school in your primary school. And you actually add the teacher as the editor-in-chief, you will get specific roles. It's all about making it real and actual. And we also give young people the opportunity to hear with journalists, as we're doing behind the headlines, to actually make them realise what it is in terms of aspiration building, but also make it relatable in terms of what journalists do and also their role in fact-checking and actually sort of the role of news in holding power to account, which leads lastly on to my last couple of slides. It's all about making media and news literacy real, using real news examples and engaging young people with news, because children really do respond to news, and our greatest success has come from actually involving young people with difficult news stories as well. This lesson is on Windrush. It's one of the most popular ones that we have in Newswise, and children are outraged by this story, and it really helps them understand the role of news in holding power to account and the important right to have up-to-date and information that covers the whole of society. And likewise, the results for Newswise are fantastic. Just in terms of recent evaluations show that pupils taking part increased their interest in news, had greater critical engagement, and improved their confidence when gathering news. And likewise, 100% of teachers said that pupil skills about thinking about the news and being critically analytical, had increased, and 100% of teachers said they are now more confident in being able to teach news literacy with their students. So just to sum up, for us, effective news and media literacy education is about those 4 principles, which is understanding, access, critical analysis, and participation. And we aim to do that and deliver it with interactivity, creativity, authenticity, and trying to be unique. Thank you very much. And that is me.
Hi everyone, my name's Faye. I'm the Head of Schools Programmes at National Literacy Trust, and one of the areas I look after is our critical literacy work. Many names, as Peter's presentation showed at the beginning, doesn't it? News literacy, critical literacy, media literacy. And I'm also on the Ofcom's Making Sense of Media advisory panel, and I chair the News Literacy Network, which I will talk about a little bit today. So that's me. I'm going to dive straight through. To give you a little bit of context for the organisation, again, I won't dwell on this very long, but this is the reason why our organisation exists. When we say 1 person in 6 in the UK is held back by poor literacy, what we mean is 1 in 6 adults does not have the literacy skills we would expect of an 11-year-old. And on the next slide, we can see that this has an impact across people's entire lives, not just in terms of their education, which you will have seen every day in your classrooms, but actually in terms of their employability, in terms of their health, their happiness, and even their life expectancy. So on the next slide, we work in multiple different ways to try and address this challenge. Most of the work that we do is in schools with programmes like the one in partnership with the Guardian Foundation and the PSHE Association, Newswise, which has been mentioned already. We deliver CPD and resources. We campaign, and everything that we do is underpinned by research, and we work with the communities that need our support the most. So to give you a bit of a starting point, Peter, thank you for making the point about fake news. This was a report that we published in 2018, and I think if we were publishing it today, we probably wouldn't have called it the Fake News and Critical Literacy Report, but it was 2018 and we did. So the shocking statistic, this piece of work, this was a commission for the APPG for literacy, and it came out with this shocking statistic, which seen only 2% of children have the critical literacy skills they need to tell if a news story is real or fake. And that at the time was in line with what we were seeing from adults as well. A Channel 4 survey found that about 4% of adults had the skills that they needed. The question that we were asked to present on was kind of why this matters. So, you know, why is it absolutely critical? Why is it crucial that we teach news literacy for children? And I think our findings in that piece of research really strike at the heart of that. So you can see some of our findings were around children's concerns. They were worried that they wouldn't be able to spot fake news. They didn't trust the news as a result. And so that kind of culture of fear and uncertainty around the news was something that was a huge concern to us, and continues to be a concern to all of us who are kind of working in this area. And I think that's a really strong argument for why working on news literacy is absolutely crucial. So we kind of obviously in doing this wider piece of work, we were talking to a variety of different people. So we surveyed pupils, we surveyed teachers, we talked to parents, we talked to sector experts as well, different organisations. And when we spoke to teachers, what we found was that teachers really felt like they were in a brilliant position to be able to have these conversations with children. Was a really interesting finding for us. Like we found this kind of a concern among teachers, but a feeling that they perhaps didn't necessarily have the kind of knowledge and the confidence to be able to address it. So there was clearly a gap there between you know, wanting to be able to support with this and actually being able to and having the kind of everything they needed to be able to support with that, whether that's space in the curriculum, you know, whatever that is, whether it's having the right resources. So ultimately, from kind of pulling all of this research together, we felt that what was needed was this kind of whole curriculum approach to understanding critical literacy. We felt that teachers needed the time to be able to explore this, to be able to have those quite challenging conversations sometimes, and to be able to really have that at the heart of their teaching practice. We felt that in terms of the curriculum, you know, that there are skills that are taught that are relevant to critical literacy, but they're not necessarily made explicit in terms of, you know, what's relevant today. And we feel that there is space for that in every single subject. There is space to be able to explore and to teach the critical literacy skills that children need, and which would help them to be able to navigate news, especially online. There were 2 outcomes that came out of that piece of research that we did back in 2018. So, you know, having kind of found out what the problems were and what some suggested solutions were, there were 2 things that we produced. One of them, and I won't go into too much detail about Newswise because Margaret's brilliantly done that for me already, talking about the project that we developed in partnership with the Guardian Foundation and the PSHE Association. This is the kind of unit of work. So Margaret mentioned the kind of the lesson plans that are in place, and this is the focus of Newswise. So it's about kind of understanding how and why the news is produced, to enable pupils to be able to navigate the news, and then also to be able to write their news as well. And, you know, I think the keywords that Margaret shared around authenticity, that really kind of strikes true for me. That's something that we've really seen, you know, if pupils understand what news is and that news is happening all around them and are able to kind of really put themselves in the shoes of a journalist, I think that's a really, really helpful thing. And that's kind of something that we've seen time and again in delivering Newswise, which is brilliant. We find that this is a really effective approach. So in using those three models, we find that this is really effective. I think on my next slide, I was talked specifically about the impact in COVID times. So again, we were asked kind of, why is this work important and what has been the impact of the pandemic? So this was a quote that we took from one of the teachers that we worked with this year, obviously have adapted to be able to deliver online. And we had really brilliant responses. Our sense is that we were just really relieved that we had been able to work with so many children before the pandemic hit. We felt that Newswise was probably the best vaccination against misinformation around the virus that children could possibly have had, because they understood those fact-checking behaviours, because they were more likely to kind of trust the news and have interest in it. I think we saw across the board that children were disengaging with the news, but it was still affecting them throughout the pandemic. So yeah, we were really pleased to be able to continue delivering and to feel like we were able to kind of make a bit of a difference for children who had particular concerns around how the pandemic was being reported. Something else I wanted to mention in terms of what we do with Newswise is working with parents, and we've looked into the role of parents as well. Obviously teachers brilliantly kind of see this as work that they need to do, but of course, a lot of news is consumed at home, and so therefore there's a crucial role for parents to play as well. In terms of what we've seen in our research, we have seen that there are gaps in particular communities. We've seen that adults with low socioeconomic status are less likely to engage with the news and less likely to have conversations with their children about the news as well. So in terms of the way that we target Newswise, we deliver parent workshops, we kind of support people to get involved, and we also think about how we target communities that might particularly need that additional support. So I think that's worth considering as well. So I mentioned, so Newswise is one of our responses to the initial piece of work that we did in 2018, to that initial commissioned report. The other thing is that the News Literacy Network was born because all of these organisations had a role in contributing to the piece of work. We decided that we wanted to continue working together. So I'm absolutely thrilled that First News and the Guardian Foundation and BBC Young Reporter and London CLC are all members of the News Literacy Network. I'm really proud to chair that group, and we come together. We're all organisations working in a variety of different ways in the education sector. And I think the main learning from that piece of work and from the way that we've all worked together is that we're all delivering news literacy, we're all kind of contributing to this sector, but we're all doing it in a slightly different way. And so the takeaway that I think I'd probably give to those of you joining this webinar today is that there is something for everyone. Whatever you need for your class and for your particular setting, whether you're just starting out, whether you're a bit of an expert, whether you're a former journalist, which some teachers are, there's definitely something out there for you. So yeah, really proud of this piece of work. And as Peter mentioned again at the beginning, we were able to kind of respond to the online media literacy strategy, which was launched earlier this year together, which we were really proud of. We've pulled together the resources. It's not totally comprehensive. This is not all of the resources in the world that exist on news literacy. I'm sure there are more, but this is a starting point. So on our website, we've got links through to all of the members' websites, all of their kind of a lot of their resources. So it might be a useful starting point. If you are just getting started, it might be a helpful place to have a look. But please do go to the websites of everyone who's talking here today, because they've got much more detailed and very impressive sets of resources as well.